Very special patch notes review. As you can see at the top here, we've got some really cool stuff happening. We got an official partnership with Nickelodeon with Hi-Rez to make some Avatar themed skins. Like I said, this is officially licensed, so they can get as specific as they want with these. We're not in a situation like before where that Scorpion inspired skin for Raven got removed from the game because of copyright infringement. No, this is totally legal, good to go. So it'll be really awesome. Can't really show you guys any of the demo stuff, but of course you can go look up the trailer for these on the Smite YouTube channel. Anyway, so we got Aang Merlin skin, a Zuko Susanoo skin, and then a Korra Scotty, because you got the big boy here, of course. All of these have custom backing animations too, which is something you typically do not get with skins, generally. So that's a really great touch. Everything is custom animations, so even with the auto attack, so everything looks, accurate, show accurate, and nothing looks out of place or weird. With that, of course, quickly point out these are on the battle pass, so you will need that to get all of these skins that will require an in-game purchase. And then alternate versions of these skins. We got Avatar State skins for Aang and Korra, and then the Blue Spirit Zuko here. And then, of course, our standard things down here, normal game skins. So, new Kukulkan skin, as if we needed one, but whatever. Pinata Party Kumbhakarna. Haze Paper Mache, you can see that. Got another Dubstep skin, Base Demon Raijin. Creepy ass clown skin for Izanami, because that's great. And then, of course, the Ares visual update. As you can see here, he's got a bit of a liposuction done here. Looking very trim. No more Mr. Big Hands, which is kind of disappointing, because that was what was fun about the character, were his giant hands, but those are gone in favor of better proportions. Of course, he still looks just as menacing as he did before. Great things there. Release schedule. Here it is. Mid-season update goes live July 14th. There's also a bonus update that will be going live next week that you can go look at. We're not going to be looking at that, though. These Avatar Battle Pass Team Avatar Jump Stamp. Pabu Avatar, I don't know what that is. I don't remember everything. And then loading screen, title. And then all these new items. Announcer packs for all these guys too. That's pretty cool. Then some animated avatars for each of the nations. Cabbages, global emote. The Raven Batu Death Stamp. Op Award, Naga Award. Naga is the big dog polar bear looking thing, I think. Then that stuff there, and then the prestige track items. Oh, so you actually get these. Okay, so this is the premium track, and then the prestige track is even more extra stuff. It's just the alternate skins here. Project Olympus. These gods have all had their mastery skins updated. You can see Kronos, Kumbhakarna, Janus, and Agni. Ares update there. Punishment reports. They're fixing things because there was a bug where people were getting extra report notifications when they weren't supposed to. but they have a new system to better detect malicious reporting, to suss out whoever was, whichever people were actually mass reporting and doing garbage like that. And of course, repeated abuse of the system will be bannable. Vision shard. Or changing the reminder to purchase a second relic to appear when you enter the fountain instead of waiting until you've walked out. Okay. Bug fixes. General. Fixed an issue where if the player dropped from a ranked match, they'd be shown their TP and rank progress in the next match they play, regardless of the mode. Fix a small window of time during their intro animation when jungle camp monsters could be damaged from outside their leash radius. Live spectate in assisted camera mode. Fixed an issue where if you selected player, your selected player dies, the camera does not jump to another player. Fixed HUD in bottom left of Hades frame, I think is what they meant to say. Whoopsie. Gods Anubis fixed an issue where the basic attack animations were not playing as intended while moving on the demonic pack skin. Cthulhu fixed incorrect Pantheon icons showing in match lobby. Cleaned up some jitter issues with the mire. Fixed rushing terror not consistently hitting God with end grapple damage. Fixed an issue where Cthulhu would turn invisible until respawn. Note, please let us know if this issue persists. Fixed friendly knocks from not being able to leave Cthulhu by an ultimate form. Fafnir reduced flicker present on some skins when dragging. Blah, blah. That's a cosmetic bug. Fixed an issue where Sylvanas could only hit the jungle shrine from specific angles. Fixed Staff Merida not reducing damage on second fire from Baba Yaga Brew. Balance live with the mid-season update. Mid-season ranked reset is here. As with previous splits, variants will be softly reset, as will players who are diamond and above. Players will have a renewed chance to prove themselves, and players will need to fight to claim the #1 spot on the leaderboard. As if that makes a huge difference, because matches still get one-sided. Once you get about halfway through plat, things get really weird with the matchmaking. God leaderboards and leaderboard frames are being reset. Okay. But yeah, they still have not worked out the matchmaking problems. Things are still very much out of balance once you get up to a certain rank. There's Conquest. The rank Conquest is literally an RNG mode at this point. It's based on luck. Whether or not you get a good team and actually can have a chance to win. Adjust and duel, remove protection, scaling on fire minions, decrease max health scaling for brutes and archers. Because that shit was annoying. Fix that. Conquest. We'll get into the changes down here. But just know that they want to make the game a little bit more interesting, make things more even across the lanes, and, you know, excuse me, make the jungle a bit more challenging. So it's not so easy to get all that farm and clear those camps. We'll get into that down here. Anyway, Jungle Shrine now only requires a single attack to get the gold bounty. Increase gold per god per stack from 5 to 10. Lane minions, adjusted AI to change their target prioritization. When minions are fighting other minions, they will target the closest minion rather than the first target they see. This is recalculated after every attack. This results in minion waves more evenly trading. Adjusted minion AI for better performance and responsiveness. Minions will be more responsive to detecting an enemy that has entered their range and targeting them. Made adjustments to reduce jostling that can result in minions bunching up before meeting. Mid lane, camps of 2 small harpies have been changed to a single elder harpy, similar to duo side. Gold Fury reduced hitbox size by 25%. Interesting. Just an AI for smoother pathing. Certain jungle monsters are now aggressive. These monsters will charge forward and attack and use a special attack as soon as God enters their leash radius. Oh, these guys here. Manticore's chimeras, all types of harpies, gold fury, fire giant. Others are defensive. These monsters will behave as usual and will remain in place until attacked. Oracles, pyromancers, centaurs, satyrs. So, change the behavior to reflect different types of buffs. The Alpha Harpy. The new dual lane objective has had some difficult time balancing its risk versus reward. We wanted this camp to be slower to clear, but making it too tanky felt bad. Now I can fight back with an attack speed debuff instead. Have your support tank it for you, or jungler clear it quicker to prevent being debuffed. Carries who solo this will put themselves at greater risk from the enemy carry. Ability Screech applies a 15% attack speed debuff to its target, stacks up to 2 times, lasts 6 seconds. And then balance base increased XP reward, decreased gold reward, decreased max health, increased physical protection, magical protection, decreased physical power. Scaling, decreased max health from 180 to 150, decreased physical protection from 8 to 2, increased magical protection from 1 to 2, increased physical power from 2 to 4. And then the Elder Harpy. This is the one that's going by the mid camp. They have no abilities, but they will follow the aggressive behavior. Base decreased magical protection from 6 to 2. Scaling, increased max health 75 to 125. Increased magical protection from 1 to 2. Increased physical power from 2 to 4. Blah, 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 blah. Well, no, we should look at all these. Harpies bounce base, decreased magical protection, increased max health, increased magical protection, increased physical power. This is on scaling, by the way. So. Manticore, no stat changes here, but new ability Berserk triggers when Manticore goes below 45% health. This attack has increased attack speed, causing players to take more damage over time. That's the red buff Manticore, and the Chimera at the purple buff. Void Sludge. Chimera fires a projectile attack at its target, applying a debuff for the first target it aggroes. Decreases protections by 20% with this debuff applied, enemy minions will prioritize you less, even if you deal damage to an enemy god. Lasts 20 seconds, 30-second cooldown. Centaurs at the speed buff. New ability Spear Thrust lines up for a powerful thrust, damaging all enemies in a line. Deals 3x its basic attack damage to enemies within range. And then base increased. Oh, this is for all of them. Okay. Red, purple, and speed. Increase XP reward, increase gold reward, decrease max health. Decrease magical protection, decrease physical power. On scaling, increase max health from increase magical protection, increase physical power. And now the minis for each one. Base, increase XP reward, increase gold, increase max health. Scaling, increase max health, increase magical protection, increase physical power. So there we go. And then the Satyr, the blue buff. Ability Summon Spirits. Up to 4 Spirit Satyrs will be summoned in to help the Satyr shortly after he enters combat. These have very low HP, but can deal a lot of damage if left in check. Spirit Satyr base, no gold XP reward, 10 max health, 9 power. Scaling, 40 max health, 2 physical protection, 2 magical protection, 4 physical power. Buff balance. This camp no longer has minis. It is a solo buff holder. The buff holder is worth the same total XP and gold as the other buff camps, with the minis included. Base increased XP reward, increased gold rewards, and scaling increased XP reward and increased gold reward. So, there we go. And as you will note, because these guys are defensive, they do not use an offensive type ability. It summons the 4 satyrs to protect itself. You'll see all the defensive ones defensive behavior buffs will do something that protect themselves rather than damage you in some way. Anyway, but first, Pyromancer, new ability, Infernal Ritual. Shortly after being attacked, the Pyromancer enters into a 3-second duration channeled spell. If successful, it casts Infernal Ritual. This spell is an AoE debuff that causes all nearby gods to take 15% increased damage from all sources. It lasts 10 seconds. The Pyromancer can be interrupted during its 3-second channel time by stun, silence, knockout, mesmerize, and fear. So, the thing about this buff, I think why they're doing it is because not a lot happens around the Pyromancer. It's literally, if you got time to do it, you kind of just do the buff. It's not a big threat to you, and it doesn't have a lot of health, and it doesn't take very long to take, so it's usually not a contested objective very often. These changes would make that a little more difficult. You got to think about things. You got to think, well, we got to keep it from using ritual. You know, somebody comes in and we get hit by that could be a problem because we take more damage, blah, blah, blah. So there's more for you to think about when doing that. Some people have been going to the extreme and saying nobody's going to want to do objectives or jungle camps. That's not true. You're just going to have to figure out a way to work around these things. But I like the changes because before the jungle's kind of mindless farm. You just, oh, the buff is here, get the buff. You don't have to think about anything. That's not fun. Well, okay. Still be fun, but it's really boring. I like the map to be a little bit more interesting than that. So, I don't have a problem with these changes. New ability, Guarding Ritual. Shortly after being attacked, the oracles enter into a 3-second duration channeled spell. This buff causes the oracles to take 40% reduced damage for 5 seconds. They can be interrupted by crowd control. Fire Giant now spawns molten pools when a god enters its attack area. 30-second cooldown because they made him an aggressive enemy. So if you get near him, he will attack you by doing that, which makes sense for what they're doing. And had people, like, some people use that wall to get away, and now they're going to take more damage, yes. But it's like, it makes sense. It's a fire giant. You want to just go near the fire giant? No. Why would you do that? He's going to attack you. Duh. There's plenty of walls in the jungle as it is, so, you know, you can use stuff to escape just as well. This is not a big deal. There's also 30 seconds, and it's like, you know, it does it once every 30 seconds. So it's like he puts the pull down, you just walk away from it. It's not the only issue I could see if you're trying to blink and you're walking through, then that might be an issue. But again, not a big thing. Gold Fury, new abilities, and they're unique to each one. Channels a spell on a single target that applies a stacking debuff every 5 seconds for 5 seconds. Every 0.5 seconds. Lasts for 5 seconds. Stacks up to 6 times. For the standard Gold Fury, Burn of Riches 5% slow per stack, plus 20 gold bounty when killed per stack. Oni Burden of War, 5% increased damage taken from all sources per stack. Primal Burden of Dread, 5% reduced damage dealt per stack. This one is a little bit dangerous, but it's the risk-reward thing here. You know, the Oni Fury does a lot. It gives you the buffed minions when you kill it. So, making it the most threatening because it does this, I think, is a good thing. When you know the Oni's up, that means it's going to be contested. Well, because, well, this will happen. And you will see teams being very careful about when they engage on the Oni Fury. Of course, I like extra gameplay decisions. It's always fun. This really makes you think about what type of Fury you have up and whether or not you should take it at the time. And items, blah blah blah, there's not really a thing here. They changed a lot of physical pen to be percent based on items, similar to magical items, capping it at 40%. Of course, they have all three classes to think about, because every class hunter, assassin, warrior typically want some form of pen in their builds. So there's a lot to think about there. So they've handled it with item variety. So you have a lot of options. Of course, this with physical gods, they're not trying to restrict flat pen like they were so much with mages. Stacking flat pen will be more difficult though, because it takes typically more items. Blah blah blah. Just stuff, and like we saw here, Titan's Bane increased cost from 2300 to 2550, increased power to 40, added 20% physical pen, and new passive. Your first ability cast gains 20% physical pen. Very similar to Obshard. And because of the changes they're making to add percent pen to items, they're toning down Executioner, decreased cost from 2350 to 2200. Increased physical power though, but then the decreased passive shred goes down from 12 to 7% per stack to a total of 21% because it stacks 3 times. And then here we have Atlantis Bow, which has been redesigned to focus, or no, that's what it currently does. Okay, let me just read this. Keeping with this theme, this new 20% penetration choice is getting an update to better serve the goal of attack speed and mobility. This buff reduces all forms of movement penalties, such as blah blah. Well, they've made this basically a more of a core hunter item than it was. Added 20% pen, removed the movement speed, new passive. If you receive a kill or assist on an enemy god, you get Atalanta's agility for 10 seconds. This effect increases your attack speed by 20% and decreases the movement penalty for attacking, backpedaling, and strafing by 50%. Increases players' move speed while strafing from 80 to 90, back from 60 to 80%. And then, yeah, you get it. Raise increased costs because everyone wanted it all the time. Basic stuff here. Silver Branch added 10% physical pen, removed 10 flat pen, increased physical power gain from passive from 1.5 to 2 power per stack. To make it a really good option if you got high attack speed. Supposedly. 8-pointed Shuriken reduced attack speed from 10 to 7%. And then new item, Shadow Steel Shuriken. Hunters have struggled to build anti-heal. Brawlers, Beatstick, and Toxic Blade have their strong use cases, but most hunters struggle to make room for those items effectively. Enter the Shadow Steel Shuriken. Critical Strike is a stat line that is easier to build into for hunters, giving them access to this counter build option at the cost of some more pure damage choices. 2,500 gold. 20 physical power, 10% attack speed, 20% crit chance. Enemies hit by your critical strikes have 40% reduced healing and regen. So this is a straight boxing item here. This is designed for you to be fighting another hunter, typically. Although this works well against healers as well, so there's that to think about. Which could make it a good pickup for some junglers. If you've got, for instance, a Hell in the mid lane, and you're going to play a jungler, you know, maybe you want Mercury, maybe you want, what's her name, Serrated, something like that. You know, just generally any assassin that builds crit well, this would be a usable option for them as well. Except this is a hunter-only item. Don't remember. If that's the case, then that doesn't matter. Anyway, Poison Star decreased attack speed, increased physical power. So I don't know what that really does. Anyway, when Demon, decreased critical strike chance from 20% to 15, decreased physical power from 30 to 25. Passive now provides 10% physical pen in addition to the attack speed and movement speed passive that already exist. Of course, these attack speed reductions, of course, are to reflect the changes to other items so that your stats don't get wildly out of control for building items that you would normally intend to build. Soul Eater, gaining some percent physical pen, becoming a solid go-to option for our physical ability gods. We are adjusting its cost and stats, easing its curve, and making room for the penetration. Players will now benefit from the ability lifesteal immediately. Soul Eater now fulfills its role more quickly when encouraging stacking to get full strength it can provide. Decreased cost 2300 to 2100. Decreased power 40 to 30. Removed mana. Added 10% physical pen. Now provides 5% ability lifesteal even before stacks are completed. And the item evolves. Evolved Soul Eater. Decreased power from 60 to 40. Removed 200 mana. Added 10% physical penetration. Increased physical ability lifesteal from 15 to 20%. It will still stack the same way as before, but now you will get a 5% ability lifesteal bonus at the base version. This here, we do a bit of math with this guy. Say you're a god like King Arthur. Say your one does, we'll say 200 damage, right? Fair number. If you hit somebody with that, that will give you, give me a moment, math, should give you 40 health, right? So that's a pretty good heal. Granted, you won't have any tankiness like you would if you had Glad Shield, but that's better healing than it has. And there is no limit to the amount of effectiveness you get from that healing, like there was with Glad Shield. I say there was for a key reason, and we'll get to that. Don't worry. Heartseeker, decreased cost, removed 10 physical penetration, added 10% physical penetration, which may or may not make this item better. I mean, they decreased the cost, so it's already buffed for no reason. That one's weird. I don't know why. Fail not added 10% physical pen. Why not? Masamune out of the game, but they put in something else. Well, they put in an item to take its place, and then they put in another item that has the same kind of ability or passive it does. Anyway, new item. Many Serrated Edge. Many melee gods focus on their kit to get into a fight, basic attack their way to victory. For those gods, Serrated Edge can be a strong choice because we're encouraging holding down the left click button to win a fight. It boasts a variety of stats that assist in staying in a team fight, including complete bullshit and, well, we'll get to that, including one of the few places you can get 20% penetration. Players will need to think about their ability usage carefully, deciding to have all their potential options on cooldown is worth an immediate power spike. If you just get this in X, you kill everything. It's pretty simple. Anyway, 2,400 gold, 40 power, 10% lifesteal, 10% movement speed, 20% physical penetration. If all of your non-ultimate abilities are on cooldown, gain 40 basic attack power and 10% lifesteal. So for Kali of Mercury, this is one of the best items you can possibly get now. And why are we making those gods across the board stronger? I don't know. This item is dumb. You just literally get 40 basic attack power. And with Kali, this is silly because you've seen her attack chain. That thing's ridiculous. Give her 40 more in hand and more lifesteal, and it's like, ta-da, let me just ult you after I've used every other ability and you're dead. Small brain. I don't like it. Anyway, Glad Shield and Berserker Shield are being moved to tier 3 items and no longer focus on sustain. This is a heavy shift in the solo warrior metas, but we believe it to be a healthy direction. The free sustain these items have dictated much of the metas for seasons now, and with our warriors blessing shake up in duo lane, we feel now is a good time to further shake things up. Before going specifically into each item, we do expect such a core staple being adjusted to have knock-on effects and our plan to address them as they rise. Glad Shield changes. Now a tier 3 that builds off a tower shield. 2,500 gold. 25 physical power, 200 health. That's a lot of health though. 40 physical protection, 10% CDR. Any passive, any enemy god who is under 50% health takes bonus damage for your abilities equal to 15 plus 2 per level. Bonus physical damage triggers only once per ability. Now this is a hybrid item. It's a little bit more tankier, but it has no sustain. But this goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? With how Soul Eater works now, since you're getting an immediate benefit from it. Not to mention the evolve benefit you get, which you will get very fast. Because it is for anything, you get a stack when anything dies near you. That includes all minions, all jungle camps. So you get 12 stacks per wave on that, and you will have it done very quick. It's 20% healing on your abilities. No limit to how much healing you can get. Unlike how they had changed Glad Shield's passive before. Instead, you'd have that, and then you have this to make you even tankier, give you CDR and other things, and take bonus damage, which means you get more healing because you're dealing more damage with the ability, blah, blah, blah. Soul Eater is a meta item in solo lane now, and I don't feel good about that, to be honest. Anyway, yeah. So there's that. Anyway, here's this thing, 2,500 gold, 40 physical power, 30 physical protection, 20% attack speed, 10% physical pin, so less protections, more power. If you drop below 40% HP, you become Berserk. Berserk provides 20 physical power and 20% attack speed, lasts 5 seconds, refreshes on if healed, and then re-damaged. They want to make Erlang Shen meta again, I guess, which I'm fine with. You haven't seen that god in solo lane in such a long time. I'm really sad about that. That would be a good item for him. It's a good item for Osiris, too. It's actually really stupid for Osiris. He's the best solo in the game now. Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. New items. I mean, there's a lot of new items here, so there might be... Well, not a lot of new items. There should be some variety because there's a lot of weird interactions here you can play with. But we'll see. The Sledge is a new item in the Hammer Tree. While it is Masamune with a new coat of paint, it has a distinct adjustment that separates two items. First, this item no longer provides movement speed, instead providing a large amount of crowd control reduction. I'm going to miss that. I love Masamune, dude. I loved it. It gave me movement speed. That was so fun on certain gods. Especially ones that had a lot of sustain, but kind of just run at you. That made them more threatening. Second, this item provides more tanky stats at the cost of some power. Finally, its passive now stacks only 3 times, but for a higher amount of prots. This shift makes it a strong choice in skirmishes rather than full fights. 2,300 gold, 40 physical power, 300 health, 150 mana, 20 CCR. For each enemy within 55 units, you gain 10 magical and physical protections, stacking up 3 times. 30, yay! But I think that's less prots than it used to have, but I do... whatever. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's a cool item. I mean, it's a lot of health in CCR, which is, like, cool. Well, Masamune was not an item you typically saw in solo builds. Again, I don't know why. There are certain gods that use that item pretty well. But I think a lot of them might have just been underutilized. I don't know. I mean, it's cheap. Big tanky, yeah. We got the CCR, we got the power, we got the mana. I mean, sustain gods love this thing. Like, I think we got some interesting build options here, which I like. I hate meta dictated builds. They drive me absolutely nuts. Because you literally, it's gods building the same items across the board, and it drives me absolutely crazy because it's not fun, that's not interesting, that's boring, and I hate boring. I want to be able to dictate how I play the game, not have the meta dictate to me how I'm supposed to. You know? Anyway, rant is over for a minute. Assassin's Blessing increased health from 50 to 100. Now provides 7 physical and magical power. Increased healing from jungle monsters from 7 to 8%. Decreased bonus damage done to jungle monsters from 40 to 30%. I don't know why these changes were made. I think they're trying to figure out how to balance out your ability to clear the camp with the amount of risk you take to actually fight the camp, with how they've changed the whole thing. I don't know. Weird stuff. Increased base power from 65 to 85. Decreased base power per stack from 1.8. I should have said this is Warlock staff. Total is increased from 140 to 145. So they said he wanted to be... Warlock staff was a concern for us at the start of the season. We shifted its stats to be more aggressive to pair with the addition of percent pen, but this shift left it underwhelming. We are increasing its immediate strength, easing the process of building it, and fully stacking it. Alright. Book of Thoth. Decreased cost from 2650 to 2500. Tyrannical Plate Helm. Increased magical power from 70 to 85. Increased minion health from 10 to 20%. For no reason. This is a stupid change, and I hate it. Now it's overstated. There's an item with 85 power and, what, 40 protections? I thought we had left behind the days of items providing too many stats across the board, but well, Veil of Renewal quality change here. Decreased time it takes to heal for 15% and regain 15% mana from 5 to 3 seconds. So no one builds it anymore. Item used to be amazing for certain junglers. Stone of Gaia, increased healing per second from 0.3 to 0.5% of your max health. I don't know why. This item doesn't need to be buffed. It's a silly item. Anyway, how did the Nemi line remove passive? New passive. Every 15 seconds this item generates a block stack for the owner, max 1 stack. I kind of like this, because the dealing damage back thing was funny. You got punished for attacking someone, and that's kind of goofy to me. This doesn't punish you. This is RNG of whether or not one of your autos doesn't deal damage. It's better to me than, you know, this is better to me than old Nemean, because it gives you the tanks protection to engage. You know, being able to block that one auto might be enough for you to decide to engage on target. Wait, Ring of Hecate, 2,500 gold. They don't specify what that is. Good job. 80 power, 30% attack speed, 20% lifesteal, new passive. Each successful basic attack applies a hex to enemies and empowers you. Enemies receive 5% decreased power per stack. You receive 5% increased power and increased healing gain. This is a magical Iqbal. Both effects stack up to 3 times and stacks last 5 seconds. On magicals, that's a nasty item. Like 15% power reduction on a mage. If you're fighting a mage, that hurts. Of course, I imagine this also works on hunters as well. It's less of a big deal to them, but it makes sure that magical ADCs can box better. Which this is a little bit better to that end. They tried that with the first passive on this to give you the bonus lifesteal, but that could get countered pretty easily. This can't be countered unless your opponent also has an item that does the same thing. Divine Ruin, increase magical power from 80 to 90, decrease pin from 15 to 10. Spear of Deso, decrease pin from 15 to 10. Build those percent pin items, guys. That's what they want, I guess. But this is also a mage build domination. Decreasing the pin might make it less potent, but giving it more power, and it's also still an anti-heal option. So I don't know that the domination excuse me, of the item will change because of that. See, they say here, high power and utility for Spear of Desolation in addition to the penetration. So, tiny nerf because it's already big power. Spear of the Magus. They have done a horrible thing here. Spear of the Magus used to define mage metas on its own, while the rework focused on keeping some of the identity of its previous version. It felt overall underwhelming and little room to buff it without creating a similar scenario. We have taken the passive in a new direction while bringing back some of the tech from a previously loved item. Spear of the Magus now marks a single enemy, giving you and your team extra damage against them. Mages with strong setup CC can now better reward their team for properly following up. 2450 gold, 110 magical power for 2450. Yes, we didn't totally break the game. This is a horrible idea and I hate it. It had enough power. You could have buffed it to 80 power. That's 5 more power than it had. And just, that's it. Okay? If you're not going to increase the gold cost that much, what is the point of this? This is dumb. I hate that. Anyway, new passive. Any god do damage becomes marked and debuff and takes 7.5% increased damage from all sources for 10 seconds. Why that number? I don't know. This effect can only affect one god at a time. It can only occur once every 10 seconds. At least the passive has better functionality. But of course, this, you know, this is bad when Shinto is tweeting about it. That dude is probably the best mid, in my opinion, right now in the SPL. And he likes this item, so you can bet that's a bad thing. He plays Merlin a lot. And what does Merlin do? He almost only does tick damage. He's got one ability that doesn't do tick damage. Which actually doesn't matter now because the passive has changed and you just take more damage. What am I saying? So it doesn't matter what god it is, it's just more damage. Oh, man. Of course, if you're fighting a god, if you're using a god that can cast multiple abilities at once, like Merlin, then that's very bad for you to take that much damage from everything. Anyway. We're Tabe, 100 mana. Okay. Teleport Glyph. You can teleport the Phoenixes. Whoop-de-doo. Cursed Ankh. Extra flexibility. When applied, this relic now reduces active shields by 50%. Thank God we have anti-shield items now. Sunder. Will completely destroy a shield when applied. Of course, it only affects one god. Time. Ratatasker. It's time to go nuts. Even as Yggdrasil wavers, it still lends strength to its messenger. His original Acorns provided unique benefits, drastically changing his playstyle game to game. Only interesting, he created unique balance problems that were not helped by the variants in initial kit powers, but we knew this was something players wanted to see return. Our goal for these Acorns is to augment and double down on strengths that exist in his current kit, allowing players to pick what they like to do while playing Ratatasker and Excel. This keeps his power and variance grounded and avoids some of the pitfalls in his initial design while still allowing for player expression. Enjoy using your ultimate for engage. The bonus health and healing from Evergreen Acorn will help you survive. Want to shred your opponents? Thick Bark is a strong choice, and of course, if you enjoy playing him like the assassin he is, we got you covered. Bristle Bush lets you dive in and swing hard while Thistle Thorn rounds out his ability damage, and don't forget a more reliable range stun. Wow. Rattusker is now also followed by the Acorn of his choosing skin based on what skin you have selected. This gives each Rattusker some extra flair, jazz hands, and gives enemies in-game visibility on how you are choosing to play. We're excited for you all to get a hand on these acorns. Here we go. Here's Acorn. Lively Acorn, just a basic tier 2, does nothing particularly special. 700 gold, 10 power, 10 movement, 10% movement. When Rattusker damages an enemy god with an ability, he heals for 3% of his max health. And then into the tier 3s we go. Evergreen Acorn builds from our friend up here. 1900 gold, 35 physical power, 20% movement speed, and 15% more maximum health. When Rattusker damages an enemy god with an ability, he heals for 7% of his maximum health and mana. And then Thick Bark, 1900 gold, also 25 power, 20% movement speed, plus 15% protections. When Rattusker damages a god with an ability, he heals for 3% of his maximum health. Flurry has an additional change where Rattusker gains protections that he shreds from enemy gods. So this is a tanky, initiating jungler playstyle here. This is somebody who likes sustain, I guess. Wants to stay in fights for longer and also deal more damage. But this is a basic idea: sustain option, aggressive tanky option, so you can fight more. And then we go into the other two tier 3s, which are much more offensive in their design. Nettle Acorn, 700 gold, 15 physical power, 10% movement speed. Goes into the Bristlebush Acorn, 2050 gold, 45 physical power, 20% movement speed, 20% crit chance. Passive Dart now deals 40% increased damage and can crit. When Dart damages an enemy, Rattusker gains 10% physical lifesteal and 10% basic attack damage for 6 seconds. So this is get in, hit them hard, and then stay alive for a bit here. But this is so you can hit your target with the dart and then finish them off as quickly as possible. So this is a get in, get out option here. And then Thistle Thorn Acorn, 2050 gold, 45 physical power, 20% movement. Acorn Blast now shoots 5 acorns. Enemies hit by Acorn Blast are marked to take 5% increased damage from Rattusker's abilities, stacking up to 3 times for 5 seconds. So this is, I want to go in and lock somebody down and then hit them with all the stuff, and then they're gone. Which these don't really have much difference in their gameplay mechanics. They just change on what ability you're relying on to get your effects. And then Acorn Blast, increased damage per acorn from 40 up to 100 to 50 to 130. Increased physical power scaling from 30 to 40. Enemies hit by multiple acorns take 25% less damage on each acorn, down to a minimum of 25% damage. These changes overall should result in Rat dealing similar damage when hitting all 3 acorns. Added a note that enemies need to be hit by 3 acorns to be stunned rather than all, as it is intended for Thistle Thorn empowered Acorn Blast to stun if only 3 acorns hit. Which means you only have to hit 3 out of the 5 to get the stun as normal. So it does not change the amount of acorns you have to hit. Wait, Al Kwong, Dragon Call, decrease slow and ranged attack from 20, increase slow from 20 to 30%. When Wildstorm, decrease cooldown from 9 to 7 seconds. It's already 9 seconds. You don't need to do this. Stop No, this god is actually pretty good. People just don't play him. I don't want to talk about it. Hate Alquan. Apollo, increased physical prots from 10 to 30 up to 15 to 35. Don't know why. Just administration ranks. So it's longer at lower ranks. Great. Because that was an annoying already. Now you get stunned for a second and a half at rank 1. That's fun. Across the Sky, increased scaling per hit from 30 to 40%. I think that's how that works. RTO is coming roaring back while she plays on the fringe of competitive meta. Her overall performance elsewhere has struggled. Here we are focused on a boost to her more aggressive ability to make it a complete leveling choice while boosting utility through her abilities. Healing should be more reliable while heavy charge can deliver some crushing early slows. Energy Surge increased dual damage from 70 to 190 up to 80 to 200. Heal range increased to 65 units. Heavy Charge increased slow from 10 to 30% to 20 to 30%. I love rank 1 20% slows. That's balanced. Yeah, as if. Anyway. Baba Yaga, because she's weird and she needs early game survivability, apparently. She doesn't do much early game, to be honest. At least in my opinion. Increased damage from 65 to 225 up to 85 to 225. So higher damage at lower ranks for Bob's Brew, and then Home Sweet Home gets higher shielding. Lower ranks across the board, actually. 100 to 420 to 160 to 440. Oh man, it's not 420 anymore. Damn. It's too bad. Anyway, Bakasura. Increased physical power scaling on the self-heal from 70 to 85%. Increased protections from 10 to 30 up to 10 to 42. Because he's a weird conquest god. And I don't know why they're buffing him based on that. But, I mean, that's not a huge deal. Makes him better late game in Conquest. Because in Conquest he can get blasted and die immediately for going in. It's typically his late game issue in Conquest. Baron Samedi. Vivid Gating increased damage from 80 to 240 up to 90 to 250. Rapid Up increased scaling from 5% to 8%, 25% total to 40% total. Kabrakan now deals an initial tick of damage immediately upon casting because he hits the ground immediately, but it doesn't immediately deal damage. Makes more sense with the animation. Cerberus decreased cooldown on Paralyzing Spit from 16 to 14. Same thing on Soul Expulsion. Range Stun, Jump, for those of you who aren't familiar with ability names. 1 and 3 also for the numbers. A Chiron Training Exercise is 1 increased damage from 80 to 300 to 100 to 100 to 300. More early game damage. Masterful Shot, that's just 2. Increased scaling from 70 to 80%. Cthulhu, Descend into Madness. Cthulhu can no longer use relics on his ultimate because that didn't make sense that he could. So, Cupid, Heart Bomb minions take additional 50% additional. I'm having a hard time. This has been a long patch notes, guys. Minions take an additional 50% damage from the explosion and the initial hit. Because they want to target his early game specifically. I thought he already had a good clear on his early game, but or whatever. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That might be a little too far for bonus damage on minions. Because he's already in a... I don't know. Cupid's in a position where you only do certain comps on him or certain people only play him. Which I'm fine with that. Not every god has to be a meta option. Anyway, Medusa, because she's just disappeared for no reason. This was still a good god. You're fooling yourself if you think she wasn't before. But anyway, Viper Shot, 4 charges at all ranks instead of before where it didn't get 4 shots until rank 3, I think. Acid Spray, increased scaling from 70 to 80%, increased range from 40 to 45. Lacerate, increased root duration from 0.5 to 1 second. Buffer up and down. And she will get played, definitely. Mulan. This hero-turned goddess has kept up a strong performance since her Smite launch. Mulan Bounds often gravitates toward more of a quality of life discussion, and both these changes are designed not only to buff her, but to make her feel better to play. She doesn't need to be buffed because I find myself somehow losing my lane early game as King Arthur to her, and that doesn't make sense to me because he just deals an obscene amount of damage. Whatever. I don't know. She's bizarre, and it doesn't make sense that she should be as good in certain matchups as she is. Grapple can be hard to skill up, so we are making that a faster arc. Her ultimate can feel underwhelming, so we are increasing the damage on the final shot. This extra damage is especially good for hybrid jungle Mulans. If you want to play her in jungle, which I wouldn't, you could. Grapple, increased training speed from 300, 700, 1500 down to 200, 500, 1200 damage done. Increased protections from 15 to 35 to 20 to 40. Define Mastery, increased arrow scaling from 50 to 60% damage. These are small changes, honestly, and it's kind of whatever, but I don't think she needed a buff. Neath is getting a bunch of things. Backflip, the animation travel time for this ability has been sped up by 25% to make it a better escape that you can't immediately read, but you probably still can. Her biggest weakness. Broken Weave. All enemies now see Neath's base skin weave models, even if Neath has a skin equipped. Okay. Better consistency, I guess. Unravel, decrease attack speed buff from 30% to a stacking buff from 18 to 30, or stacking debuff rather. This ability now steals attack speed from enemy gods only, decreasing their attack speed and buffing these by the same amount. Okay. Adjust buff debuff duration from 2 to 6 seconds to 4 seconds at all ranks. Hitting multiple gods will debuff them all, but only apply 1 stack to Neath. Okay. Neath, Slice and Nemesis. Slice and Dice, increased damage from 40 to 160 to 50 to 170. Slight early game buffs. That seems like a pointless change. 10 damage doesn't feel like much to me. Anyway, Ola Run, Overflowing Divinity, increased damage from 40 to 100 to 60 to 120. But the damage decrease per shot has been increased from 20 to 30% damage reduction. So more initial damage, but it drops off at a faster rate for subsequent hits. Set, the Usurper, has fallen since his initial release. While very skilled set players could utilize him effectively, the nature of his hyper snowball left him in a strange spot. Skewer's ranks boosted not only its own damage, but boosted Spawn of Set as well, causing him to reach maximum damage by level 9. This balance problem left Skewer feeling underwhelming when used on its own and wildly strong when used well with Spawn of Set. Skewer will now skew to be stronger when used alone, and to get the full in-game strength out of it, Set will need to invest points into Spawn of Set. This should even out his strength and give players of all skill more success. Finally, Relentless will now last long enough to keep in between camps, helping his early clear in the jungle. Relentless, increased duration 5 to 6 seconds. Skewer, increased damage from 70 to 250 to 85 to 285. Increased scaling from 80% to 90%. Big numbers late with more scaling. I don't like that. Spawn of Set now deal 60 up to 80% of Skewer's damage based on their level. I feel like this just makes him better for good set players. There aren't a ton of those, but Sun Wukong defeated body increased percent HP where his passive triggers from 40 to 50%, increased the duration of his passive self buff if he heals above 50% HP from 10 to 12 seconds. 72 transformations, increased Tiger Stun from 1 to 1.4 seconds to 1.4 seconds at all ranks. So early game buff for him there, better passive. They're just buffing him because he's been kind of a weak spot in the solo lane for some time. Sun Wukong's always been a very strange god to me since, you know, the solo laners that keep coming out kind of just kept getting better and better, and he just hung around in some weird spot where he like felt like he didn't do much damage and he needed a bunch of specific items to do good, and it was weird. Of course, that buff to his one helped out a lot. This will help out more. So maybe he'll be more core in the meta now. We'll see. Sylvanas Wisps increased damage from 10 to /30 per tick. What? How does this work? To 14 to 38. I think they just didn't type all of it. Wrath of Terra damage increased from 60 up to 100 to 60 to 120. That is the per tick, I believe. They wanted to make him better late, essentially, so he still feels more threatening to better pair with his typical early aggression, I suppose. Thoth, hieroglyphic assault. This damage increase will affect all enemies, not just gods. Increase scaling damage from 20 to 25%. Added a fall off damage past 55 range, reducing damage by 25%. Actually, we need to read this, don't we? Thoth's artillery mage nature makes him difficult to play against and play as. To make him fair, he often needs underwhelming damage for the majority of the game until he really comes online late. While some may describe this as late game carries, there is a point where this is unhealthy for the god as a whole. We are shifting his strength to be overall stronger at most stages of the game and in direct one-on-one fights, but toning down his late game long-range poke. He will still focus and bring his unique strength to his team, but this should make him feel more fair to fight against and more fun to play as. Okay. Yep. Okay, Ymir got buffed. Increased duration on Frostbite from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. Increase the damage reduction from 10 to 15 seconds. There it is. I don't know. I don't know what keeps Ymir from being a meta god, necessarily. I think it's more of his playstyle is a bit odd and doesn't fit into all comps. I think when you have a Ymir on your team, he either has to be in the jungle or you have to have him in support, which means you're going to need a fairly safe hunter to pair with you and a safe mage for the most part because he has to be played so aggressively. Kind of leaves your team out on an island because he's big and he's slow and he has to be aggressive. And his ult also locks him in place, which isn't a great thing. And to do the most amount of damage, you have to stay in it, in that one spot for a long time. And that's really difficult to do in a typical Conquest match because you'll get blown up right away. So this makes other things about him a little more stronger and usable instead of him just being I go in, I freeze you, I ult. That's fine. The change with the wall I think was a big deal. But I think the main thing with Ymir is he kind of has trouble with that balance between being aggressive and being able to peel for your team. And also his lack of mobility I think is also a big issue for him. Anyway, with that, ladies and gentlemen, after an hour, we are done with this mid-season update. Anyway, got the new avatar stuff, new items, lots of god changes. Should be fun. See what happens. PTS will probably be on Friday like usual. You can download that off of Steam for those of you that don't have it already and want to check out these things before they get in the live game. Anyway, with that, like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this patch notes update, review, reaction, whatever you want to call it. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and as usual, check the helpful links down in the description. And with that, I will see you guys next time for some more Smite. Have a good one.